Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. On December 26, 2004, this is what Aceh looked like on, an aerial view of Aceh. And then this is what happened 2 days after tsunami. The brown image was basically mud, and you can see that there are some areas that are submerged. That's what happened. But they went below the surface. It changed the whole geographic of Aceh and Nias Islands. They did a very good job cleaning up the whole mess. Really, really good. When I came in June 2005, it was 6 months after, about 5 months after 6 months after tsunami. This is what I saw. Miles and miles, like clean, nothing. And then in March 2005, there was a very 8.7 Richter scale earthquake that shook Nias Island, and it destroyed about 80% of its minimum infrastructure. Nias and Aceh were not exactly very wealthy province and well-developed province areas of Nias on all the islands. So the damage is about, the affected area is about, it stretches as far as from Boston to Pittsburgh. That's how far the affected area is. And in its inland, it's about between 0.6 to 3.7 miles inland that was completely knocked down to ground because of the waves. This is Nias Island. And this is similar. Nias, because of the earthquake, it became a bit tilted. So the whole area, in some part of the northern area, in this area, it became about 1.5 meter above the normal, or what it was before. And this side, the south side, it was 1.5 meter deeper in the sea. Oops, okay. What did I do? Sorry about that. On the 6th of January 2005, Indonesia, the president of Indonesia, President Yudhoyono, led an ASEAN leaders meeting on the aftermath. So there were about 15 heads of state, and Kofi Annan was there. And we have $7.2 billion pledge for the reconstruction of Nias and Aceh. Damage assessment was at the time done by the World Bank. It was only about 4.9, and the president was very keen to do, in the spirit of, he was only about 3 months in the office at the time, and he wanted to have a theme of the whole reconstruction, and we call it Build Back Better. So we estimated that it was 7.1. The pledge was beyond that. So it was very quick, and according to Tsunami Evaluation Coalition, it was one of the quickest aid that we received, the largest amount of aid per affected person. There were some assumption that because it was after tsunami happened after Christmas, so everyone was in a mood of giving. So so it was kind of like good that happened after Christmas. After 4 years, the allocated that we reached about 6.7. So it's over 90% of the pledge, which was unheard of in the history of international aid when it comes to humanitarian aid. We reached this because we did a lot of things that maintain the relationship between the Indonesian government with the donor countries and with the international NGOs, and also the other, including the national and local players. This is what we have achieved by April. Three months in emergency, during emergency relief, we had humongous number of military personnel in the land. Aceh at the time was in the state of civil state emergency, state. I get it wrong. And in principle, the presence of foreign military in the land, it was completely violating the rule. But the president decided that it was needed, and we had over 34 countries involved in it. We have 16,000 personnel, one floating hospital that was a U.S. floating hospital. That was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was redirected from. It was on the way to Iraq, and it was redirected to Aceh at the time. We had military from Australia, from New Zealand. They have hospital in the ground within 3 weeks. And then there are jet, motherships wherever that around the coastal area, because all the ports were completely destroyed, so no one can get in with normal ships. At the time, I was helping, during emergency, I was helping one San Diego-based NGO, Project Concern International, and they sent someone with a normal boat, and it was completely sink because no one knew what was, because completely ruined by the earthquake. So we didn't know what happened, what is underneath, how deep it was. So people cannot really get in from the sea, from above. We have helicopters. That's why we have helicopters and aircrafts from all over the military, because they only those kind of equipment that can land on any kind of abnormal conditions. The opening of Aceh, it was in a way the start of the opening of, it's actually sort of like a seed of going toward having a BRR. Once you open the door, you cannot close it after emergency. There is no way. So once you open the door for Aceh and Nias, and during emergency, I think it's about 900 organizations working to deliver relief aid. So the president says that there must be something, some kind of organization that work specifically on the issue and representing the central government, but not intimidating for the local government. Mind you that when tsunami happened, Aceh had been in conflict. There was a Free Aceh movement at the time for 30 years. So, regarding trust between local and central Jakarta government, none. It's almost non-existent.
Could you just tell a tiny bit more about the civil strife in Aceh, just to paint the picture a little more clearly?
The Aceh freedom movement was basically, it was triggered because Aceh, I think still is, a wealthy province. It has a lot of minerals in it, it has a lot of natural resources, but because Indonesia under Suharto regime was very centralized, everything was controlled by him from Jakarta. There is no decentralization. Decentralization only came in 2001 after he stepped down, after he was basically forced to step down. And then the struggle was for Aceh to be free to manage its own resources, and Jakarta did not like it. So that's why there was a civil strife, and they basically had militia. So, you know, the struggle between the militia of the Aceh Freedom Movement and TNI, our national army, it was on and off for over 30 years. So basically, before tsunami, I think the organizations, the NGO that worked there before tsunami was only Save the Children, because the name, Save the Children, you know, it's not intimidating at all. You know, unlike if you have USAID came in and work, USAID came before the 70s, I think, to build the road, and that was one of the best roads along Sumatra. And do you want to continue to until the peace process, or?
Well, maybe just quickly tell that, just right, so we understand the context of the recovery efforts.
Right. So when tsunami happened, it was still, it happened about 2 months after the president of Indonesia declared that Aceh was no longer on military, what we call daerah operasi militer, military operation zone, and then turn it into civil emergency state. It was only like about a month or 2 months after that, and TNI, the National Army, was still, their presence was still very prevalent. There were still struggles, but they have decided not to ambush each other. The leader of GAM, that's the Aceh Freedom Movement, they were all outside of Aceh, so the combatants were in Aceh, but the leaders were outside of Aceh. The main leader, Hasan Tiro, the late Hasan Tiro, he was domiciled in Sweden for as long as the struggle happened. And in August 2005, they reached, 15th of August 2005, they reached peace accord that was facilitated by Antti, the president of Finland, former president of Finland. And since that, the process of recovery became easier, because there was no longer, especially for BR, they didn't have to absolutely separate between conflict and between tsunami survivor. You know, they can easily incorporate the conflict survivor into their program without calling it, you know, the conflict survivor or combatant, ex-combatants. It became more integrated in a way. Even though the Indonesian government specifically established one other agency, it's called BRA. It's basically Aceh Reintegration Agency. That was that they work under the supervision of the governor. So it's totally local. So we separate the authority. The BRA work under the governor, whereas BRR work under the president's supervision. BRR was supposed to be a one-stop shop for rehabilitation and reconstruction. So everything is done by BRR, through BRR, coordinated by BRR, implemented by BRR. It's sort of like, it's supposed to be an interagency body where everything that was done by public works, by transportation minister, by communication minister, by social welfare minister, everything was supposed to be done by BRR. So basically BRR is a state agency, but it was located in Aceh. It was the first and only, until now, state agency that was located outside of the capital. So everyone from in Jakarta, we moved to Banda Aceh. And the establishment was through negotiations. World Bank was highly involved in the process of the birth of BRR. U.S. government, Japan government, because these two were very keen. One of the two big donors for Indonesia, so the president embraced them. We had 3 governing bodies. Executing agency, that's where I work. The advisory board and supervisory board. The advisory board basically was, the members are parliament members who are from Aceh, who are there basically a task force, the group of people that was supposed to be advising on how BRR should do, how BRR should conduct, not directing, just advising. Supervisory board, they're located in Aceh. They basically become, they provide supervision. They do investigation report based on, let's say a newspaper says that this house in this area built by BRR was completely unacceptable. So they went there, they took photos, they made a report, and they presented to BRR. They called in BRR's deputies, and deputies. That's how it works. So these are like check and balance for BRR, because the authority is quite large for a sole agency. The mission is basically 3 that was mandated by the president, is to restore livelihoods and strengthen communities, facilitate and coordinate all players, and coordinate and implement government projects. This part is very time consuming. You have 600 organizations working in the ground in one province. If you don't step on each other's toes, everyone wants to build as quickly as possible because they have limited time to disburse their money. So, managing these like managing children. Nice children, just time consuming. Challenges that when BRR came on board, they were on board in April. They came to Aceh in April, end of April. So it was 4 months after tsunami. Hundreds of organizations already chose and picked their locations of projects. They already made their own deal with the heads of villages. They had worked with the mayor or district heads. And BRR, as a new kid on the block, had to come in and take the lead of the whole process. The government, what I meant by low preparedness level of government, this includes the central government, the Jakarta government, not only the local government, not only Aceh and NIAS government. And we have to deal with political sensitivity in the province. The workers should be mainly from Aceh, we have to, incorporate, we have to recruit ex-combatants or ex-GAM members to be part of our team. How do we control this? How do we make sure, how can we recruit people from Aceh who were not equipped for this kind of stuff, for this kind of work, but yet we have to get them to be on board. The responses I categorized in 4, and I will give you examples of the 4. We made government policy and strategy that were basically facilitate the work processes. We examine and we evaluate what are the regulations or laws that can be made to facilitate or accelerate the disbursement of money. Because, mind you, the lifetime is only 4 years, so everything needs to be done in 4 years. And we drove, the head of UR drove the whole 4 years in every single meeting. This has to be done in 4 years, as at least the allocation of money for the projects has to be majority within 4 years. Because beyond that, when BR is gone, you don't know who's going to control all this money. You don't know how we're going to get all these projects done. So the mentality, not the mentality, I think the mindset that we introduced for the reconstruction is emergency reconstruction. This is not normal development, because people easily slip into development mode, like when people, it's not only the government, but it's not only the workers of the humanitarian workers, but it's also the survivors. They can easily be complacent where they were. It's easy to live in barracks or in temporary shelters because food will come. They will give you money, hand out money. They will give you food. They will give you free this, free that. You don't have to pay utilities. You don't have to take care of your house. You don't have to do this. You don't have anything break down in your tent or in your temporary shelter. You can just shout and people will run with whatever that you need. So we don't want that to happen. That's why we push the emergency reconstruction mindset to everybody. We had to struggle with that because multilateral organizations like World Bank, ADB, Asian Development Bank, or Islamic Development Bank, or any kind of, or USAID, or JICA, Japan Aid, or GTZ, the German Aid Corporation. People can, after certain time, after 6 months, after 1 year, people can easily step back and say, okay, this is just normal. This is going to be normal, back to normal procedure, back to normal procurement process, back to normal disbursement process. It can take 6 months, 1 year. People, if you live in tent or if you live in temporary shelter, 6 months to 12 months, it can be forever. So, what we don't want is and these people, they don't come and protest the World Bank. They come and protest the government. So in 2007, we had to basically, the senior management of the organization had to sleep in the compound of our office because there were thousands of people outside of the office protesting, claiming that we did not do a good work. It was unpleasant. It was a bit scary, but these are the things that you have to face, and this is why we are so adamant of having people work as hard as we are. With organization and people, we recruited the best people. We managed to recruit 70% of our staff is Achenes, be it from local, those who have never left Aceh at all, or those who have left Aceh living in other part of Indonesia or overseas, and they came back to work. The system and technology, I will explain later. One of the smartest things that they have done from the beginning is to decide this. It may look very simple, but this has been the guide for all the projects that they develop. They know that in end of 2006 and 2008, in the middle of 2008, everything is like at their peak. Everything is there. Everything is going on. There is nothing left. We know that we have to work long hours to do everything, to get the land for schools, to get the land for government buildings, to get the land for relocated settlement. Organizations provided houses, but the land is provided by the government of Indonesia. So we don't, we have to acquire as fast as possible, and land acquisition, as you probably know if you have worked with government, is not like going shopping online. This is, everyone wants their land to be bought at maximum, beyond their imagination's number. So the negotiation, the negotiation that we had to go through, our land administration agency is not the best. So unfortunately, so that's why we had to fight basically with them to get them on board with us, with our work rhythm, with our work ethics, synergize with us. And it's not easy to drag normal agencies with normal mindset to work with you within your time limit. When you're on deadline and everyone says, it's okay, I have 5 years in this position, and we only have 4. And we had like thousands and thousands of people living without houses.
I was just wondering what the y-axis represents.
Oh, it's just the how we within the it doesn't represent anything basically. It's just how we see ourselves doing the work. The land is supporting system, the supporting processes. That's why infrastructure is higher than institution development, social development, because infrastructure development is on top of everything for Aceh and Nias, because those areas were not well developed before, even before tsunami. Housing development, it was between, this is how we draw it. This is just like children drawing, basically, but it became our guidance. The housing development, it should be from 2006 through 2008, mid-2008, and then after that we go down, in a way we're going down the hill, closing the shop. But we had to maintain the same stamina for 2.5 years doing housing. We did crappy job in 2005 because we just had to do it. We were thrown in the field without money. The agency was developed with no budget. They went to Aceh, no budget. Tickets were given by donors. USAID gave tickets, the UN, one of the UN agencies gave us a house, rented a house for us to work. So when I came in 2005, in June 2005, we worked, I basically had to, if I wanted a chair, it's hot seat situation, meaning there is not enough seat. I had to come in very early and put my stuff down, open my computer so that I have seat. So I have a chair to sit working. Other people, when they come in later, they worked on the floor. We had no meeting rooms. We we had meetings, we held meetings outside in the backyard on the grass. We had meetings on the floor because there was no table. We had meetings with anyone like that. We open our shoes because there's no way we can, because we had to sit on the floor. So we open our shoes when we came into the office. So it's like entering a house and traditional way of Indonesian entering our own house. It's a flexi organization. The ones that were the recruitment or selection and appointment of the high level, meaning the head of the organization and deputies, they were appointed by the president. The rest of the team members appointed by the head of the agency. So people work based on contract, 6 months contract, 12 months contract. So no one works based on, no one is guaranteed a 4 years contract. People know that when they leave their agency, so it's a mixed group of people. We had professionals from private organizations. We had civil servants. We had just recent graduates, young people, and it was quite refreshing for me, especially. I mean, Indonesians, having been under Suharto for over 3 decades, we have not, by 2004, we had not developed complete trust for government agency. So when I was offered by USAID to work with this agency for 4 years, I said no. Though I ended up at the end anyway, but I said no in the beginning. I said no way. Give me a shorter term, and then we talk later. And these are the only employees employed by VRR. How the organization is developed, in the number of employees, and the budget, the state budget disbursed. It was very centralized when I joined them, so I helped recruit some of the directors. And then we consolidated what we wanted to do. We held our first in 2000, end of 2005, we held our first what we call CFAN, Coordination Forum for Aceh and Nias. We consolidated what we wanted to do, and then we introduced regional offices. We decentralized everything. Decision making is decentralized to the regional heads. So people do not come to Aceh, to Banda Aceh, for solution from the head of BRR, but they have to come to their own regional head to find what can be done with their problem. Why we decentralized? It's one of our ways to accelerate the redevelopment of the whole province. We chose Achelis to lead this process as regional heads. For Nias, we had someone who's not. Nias had another conflict of its own. They dislike North Sumatra people, even though they are from North Sumatra, but they did not like certain tribe from North Sumatra, which basically, So we had to choose carefully who to lead this regional office, so that this person can be respected by the local government, the Nias people, and also can be respected by the provincial government, the North Sumatra governor basically, we were. So we chose someone who's Christian, because Nias is Christian. We chose someone who's Ambonese, which from where I am, who's just finished PhD from New Zealand. She just got out of school, got a call, asked to be on board, and he said yes, he didn't know what he signed up for, like I did. And decentralization went pretty well. There was struggle because we chose one person from, there was ups and downs with decentralization process. We had, I think, 3 regional heads kicked out of their position because the locals didn't want them. So we had to choose, and we had to appoint another person to replace these people. So this is how when we said capacity building, it was basically to transfer all the knowledge to the local government, to the Achenese government and the NIAS government. So we train, like the GIS system, we train the local governments, officials to do the data collection, to do the data input, to do the data analysis, and how to, generate reports from that. And then toward the end of 2008, we basically tried to capture all the lessons learned that we wanted to put in a book series. And the transition is basically to transfer all the assets, hand over the assets that we've done, that we have built. The assets meaning not only what BRR has done, has rebuilt, but also the assets that NGOs and our partners have done. This is how we gain trust. One of our ways, not gain, how we earn trust. We tell the locals that the future is in your hand, and they backed off. They had no idea how to trust us. Even though we said the future is in your hand, they didn't know that it's actually the future is in their hands. They are allowed to decide what to have in their village, because if you remember, it was completely flat. So people had to get together. The facilitation is basically what we provided. We provide the facilitators, and we not all villagers, not all heads of village want to be facilitated. Most of them, I think half in Banda Aceh, half of them, they wanted everything to be rebuilt as soon as possible. Just rebuild whatever it was. It doesn't matter whether there's no layout, doesn't matter. Just, we want our house rebuilt now. Some villagers, some heads of villagers, they're smarter. They wanted to do this, even though they know that 6 months later, it means a delay in the process of reconstruction. And this is a great picture. That this is not a Photoshop. It's an aerial photography. It was as it was. They were built very quickly, and the new land consolidation was basically 6 months later were built, and people they are happy with it. They had larger roads. They had no dead-end road. They had escape buildings. They had schools in that area. They know what to where to build playgrounds. They have all this planned. Indonesia has not been known as the most clean, government. We have certain reputation when it comes to corruption. So integrity is gotta be number one, especially when it comes to a lot of money. I mean, if you want to give money to Indonesia, people want to know where the money goes, right? In the beginning, people were complaining that the BRR staff were paid a lot of money. They were paid like Unlike a normal civil servant, they have different remuneration package. They are paid just like professionals. And people were complaining about it. And in my personal opinion, if I got paid only like them to do what they gotta do and face the fire that they had to face, I'm not willing to tell you the truth. It's not even enough. The BR, we started this with BR Integrity Pact. Every staff has to sign the pact. You may argue that, well, it's just a pact. I mean, a pact is a pact. You can easily violate it, but it's a moral obligation. And if you know that everyone is doing it, it's a group. It's a shared responsibility. It's a shared morality that people hold until the end. We have anti-corruption unit. When I got on board in June, they were talking about it, and we had help from USAID who gave assistance, technical assistance. If you know anything about Hong Kong anti-corruption agency before Hong Kong went back to China, one of the commissioner was the BRR anti-corruption unit. Well, not one of the main consultants. This is the first in the history. After this, then the Ministry of Finance helped the same, establish the same unit in her ministry. The head of anti-corruption unit it's an independent agency within the agency. It does not work under any deputies. It does not work under. It does not even work under supervision of the head of the agency. They're supposed to be independent. They're supposed to tell the head of the agency what to do for about certain issues. And then we have internal supervisory. I'm not talking about supervisory board. I'm talking about our supervisory deputy for supervision. So we have 3 layers within BRR: supervisory, the deputy for supervision, and then the anti-corruption unit, and then supervisory board. The KPK, the Corruption Eradication Commission, we have them. We managed to have them have an office in Aceh, in Banda Aceh. It was the first time also that the Treasury, National Treasury Office, had an office outside of Jakarta. This is why this disbursement and observe, how money get disbursed very quickly, how people get paid, and therefore they know that they can do things with the money instead of waiting for the money to get transferred from Jakarta. Everything was done in Aceh on the spot. And as I mentioned, supervisory and advisory boards. Advisory boards, we have them travel to Aceh and Nias to see the progress. We report back to them back to Jakarta, have meetings with them regularly. They were not friends with BRR from the beginning. Supervisory board of BRR were very critical, which we need if we want to be successful. It was not pleasant at times, but we needed their input. The breakthrough that we found out were possible. We had this fast-track project approval. So we had people work already when we were on board in April. We had people have developed their own projects. did this, did that. They picked and chose their own area for the development. And when Biara came on board, it was only 15 people, an agency of 15 people. We had help from McKinsey Consulting Group. They sent one team of, I think, 7 people. We had help, technical assistants like me from USAID, from OZAID, from French government, from Japan government. We had, and then we started to recruit people bit by bit until about end of June. It was about 60 people. The McKinsey the main task of McKinsey at the time was to do project concept note. It's a fast track project approval. So everyone had to fill in a form. They had to register what project. It's not for approval because it was there. It's already done. I mean, they're doing it already. So it's not exactly approval in the beginning. So it's more registration, what is happening, where, and who's doing it. So that's how we get things. We did outreach. We knock on doors. We have them fill in the form. We call them. We visited them. So it's a very intensive work process. And then after a few months, I think it took us about 3 months to completely document it, what's happening on the ground already, and then started the real approval, project concept note approval. And then we have Biara Trust Fund mechanism. This has never been, it's unheard of when it comes to Indonesian government state budget mechanism. We had multi-years project. The fiscal year, at the end of fiscal year in December, every work stopped because then the money will nothing happened in January through March. Nothing happened normally. If you come to Indonesia between those times, there was no development. Everyone ceased because the money is not trickling down. So you have to, for us, we cannot afford that to happen. So we had to have multi-year contracts. So that means the contractors, or we had them to work based on result. It's not per term. It's a result. You have to do this from this point to this point, and there is no recess. We have our own Reconstruction Acenias Trust Fund that is basically am I out of time? I will close it after this, and then let you have for your question. And we have trust fund, our own trust fund that that basically we started it in the beginning of 2006 for non-traditional donors, meaning the normal donors, the Norwegian, the Japanese, the American, the Dutch, so those are normal donor countries, right? We want to grab the non-traditional donor countries, meaning Yemen, Austrian, the Chinese. They didn't want to mingle with the Caucasians, so they want to give money directly to BRR, which we couldn't handle it. There is no way. We are supposed to manage only the state budget. They had to give through the government, but they didn't want it. They wanted some donor countries, some organizations, some charity foundations. They wanted to give directly to BRR, which we were not allowed by law. So we established this new system called Recovery Acenias Trust Fund, and we embraced those non-traditional donors. So these trust fund is basically to fill gap and to whatever that the donor wants, and let's say I give $1 for women empowerment, and then we make project. We work with local organizations to create projects and then ask for, ask approval for the donor, with the donor, whether this is up to your taste. And if they say yes, then we go ahead and implement it. We have integrated team. Singapore has a one-stop shop for custom and duty and tax. Not Indonesia. You have to go to the custom, you have to do tax, you have to do duty, and it takes forever to do anything clear. When I came on board, I was 6 months after tsunami, or 5.5 months after tsunami, and there were relief aid items that were still stuck in one of the ports. Cannot be cleared. That's how bad it was. And we made it happen within a couple of weeks. It was clear then. So we thought that integrated team that will make sure that, and this integrated team was based in Banda Aceh. So people do not have to go outside of the country to extend their visa. They didn't have to spend money for staff to send their staff outside of Indonesia. They can have tax process in Banda Aceh. They did not have to go to Jakarta. They did not have to go to Jakarta for any documents or importing goods or for charity. The visa and work permit, everything is done in Banda Aceh. Jakarta, the struggle for this, we have to go with the backup of the vice president. Without his backup, we had to deal with every single, the police, the tax. Tax is not friendly. It's basically money for them. The bribery system in the tax process is very creative. So they don't want to lose that creativity. So that's why the struggle, we had to use the higher power of the country, which is the president and the vice president's offices. The last one is joint land titling. We produced a document that basically mandated beneficiary of relocated houses for settlement for BRR beneficiary. Their land titling has to have the name of the husband and wife. It's mandatory. It's not mandatory nationwide. No, in Indonesia it's not. So either the house, and in Aceh traditionally, when the husband checked out of this earth, the property will go directly to the members of his scheme, not her, not the wife. So we make sure that this is completely done, and a lot of organizations were followed it, and we make sure that we have a special UNIFEM from the UN gave technical assistance for to make sure that gender equality and are mainstream in all development sectors, without mentioning quota. Because it's very easy when it comes to gender. It's quota. How many? How many? How many? It's not how many. It's how do we incorporate development projects with women's needs and men's needs equally in the term.
I think you might want to skip to that, to your last lesson slide.
And the captures that we, this is what we shared with the other countries. In April last year, we went to UN headquarters, and we delivered this document called the Tsunami Global Lessons Learned. So we documented, we captured these 10 management lessons for governments and coordinating agencies. The three main themes is how do you organize, how do you execute, and what to do with the fund that you have. These are the three main items that we wanted to share and wanted to make sure that people pick up when something like this, whether it's at this scale, and knock on wood, that's not going to be at this scale, but when something happens, you know, people can learn from what has been done, considerably successful for tsunami reconstruction, post-tsunami reconstruction. I think I close now, and then let you throw me questions.
Thank you very much. We have officially slightly less than half an hour left. What I propose that we do is to make sure that Professor Olives takes 2 minutes.
And I will actually try and take less, because I know
and then we will open up for questions, and we will run about 10 or 15 minutes over. Anyone who has to leave is certainly welcome to do so, and we will not be insulted. But I want to make sure that there's a good half hour for people to ask questions and get responses from both Maggie and Doug.
And I will cut my remarks short to make sure that because I think the question and answer is going to be key. I actually want to draw a few distinctions. I want to sort of talk about similarities and differences in the New Orleans context, as well as the disaster recovery in the United States. And I think the first thing to point out is that disaster recovery is different as you go from country to country, basically from cultural system and economic system, governance system. You're going to have very different approaches to disaster recovery. And indeed, even though there were many similarities between Katrina, the Gulf Coast, and Aceh, the biggest difference was the death toll was in New Orleans, fortunately, rather minor, and mostly that came from having warning and the ability to evacuate a very different kind of disaster. That actually has a lot to do with also the kind of recovery that is involved. So we find that different types of disasters have very different kinds of recoveries, as well as the kind of recovery or the kind of economic and cultural and governance system determines a lot of the recovery structure. In the United States and the Katrina experience, it was a very decentralized approach to disaster recovery. And that actually stems from not just this disaster, but the long tradition in both the federal system in the United States of the states versus the federal government, and then also a very strong local governance, local municipality system, and especially when it comes to the areas of disaster management and emergency response, those functions and duties, responsibilities have traditionally been at the local municipality level, and then they sort of scale up to the state level from there, mostly in support of local municipalities, and then the federal government sort of supports them. So it is essentially a decentralized system that is used. That has been traditionally for emergency response and crisis management. That same model extends to the way that we go about disaster recovery. So, for example, the programs that we actually use, in fact, there are, 5 days after the disaster, the President of the United States, instead of saying, I will appoint a panel or create a commission to an authority to do the planning for the disaster, went to the mayor of New Orleans and to the governor of Louisiana and said, I want you to deliver a plan, draft the plan and deliver a plan to me. And that is very much the sort of traditional approach. There was a lot of pressure for the president to appoint a recovery czar at the federal level, he actually resisted, President Bush resisted that for about 3 or 4 months, and then eventually appointed Don Powell as the Office of Gulf Coast Coordination. It was really a token position, and it was really much more coordinating some of the federal agencies that were operating in the area for recovery, but made no attempt to coordinate private groups, NGOs, nonprofit organizations working in the area, and really made no attempt to coordinate local or even state sort of approaches. The state of Louisiana actually did create a Louisiana Recovery Authority, but unlike the Aceh experience, they actually really just were a policy-making arm and actually did not do any reconstruction or even really coordinate all of the reconstruction efforts. So the concept of sort of coordination of disaster recovery did not happen both in New Orleans, Louisiana, or across the Gulf Coast. And this is actually pretty much in line with the way we've approached disasters throughout history as a country, largely around the concept that it's very much baked into the culture that the approach to disaster recovery in the United States has always been a market-based approach, and that it sort of goes to individualism and individual responsibility as well as community responsibility through philanthropy or faith-based groups, local charitable support for recovery, but very little actual government responsibility for managing recovery or paying for recovery. There's great emphasis in the United States historically on the use of insurance as the major mechanism by which disaster recovery is paid for, and there is a lot of issues around the issue of moral hazard and the question of often disaster recovery is disaster assistance on the recovery side is seen as something that actually encourages people to not carry the insurance to pay for their own disaster recovery or to reduce the risk of living in areas that are less vulnerable. And in fact, the traditional mechanism by which disaster recovery has always been has been in the form of loans done through the Small Business Administration to pay for this. And in Katrina was actually the first case where housing assistance through the Road Home program was actually given to homeowners after a disaster to actually rebuild. Now that probably will change the precedents going forward, but it is a long history of actually the sort of concept of people being responsible for their own recovery and no guarantee from the government, whether local, state, or federal, to actually make people whole after the disaster. The result of sort of this decentralized approach means that the recovery in New Orleans and Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama is very much a spotty or patchy, we call it the jack-o'-lantern effect. It's sort of a scattershot approach to, you can have either pockets of recovery or individual homeowners or business owners that have recovered and the people living next door who are unrecovered. It's, again, sort of a very market-based approach to the problem. And in some cases, it is very successful at recovery, and in other cases, people are left without the ability to recover. I'm going to cut it there so we can get into